The 8th console generation was a time of plentiful bounty. Across genres and platforms, from small developers and large, from all corners of the industry, there has been something to love for everyone these past few years. There have been more than a few games that can legitimately be considered as all-time greats. And though the industry at large is now waiting with bated breath to see whether the era of the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S will deliver the goods in the same way that their predecessors did, here we're going to pause and look back at the last few years. These are the best games of the previous console generation. Note, this list is not ranked. Uncharted 4 Among Thieves. A final hurrah for Nathan Drake in the last Uncharted game to be developed by Naughty Dog. The stakes were immensely high for Uncharted 4 right off the bat, and living up to expectations was not going to be easy by any means. Under the guidance of the dynamic duo of Bruce Straley and Neil Druckmann, however, Nathan Drake's final adventure proved to be one that we will never forget, perhaps even his best one ever. From a well-told story with endearing characters to thrilling set pieces to keep you on the edges of your seats, from tightly crafted and best-in-class gameplay to astoundingly beautiful visuals, Uncharted 4 delivers on all the fronts that it needed to, and then some. God of War 2018. Sony sort of ran God of War into the ground by the end of the PlayStation 3 era, and once God of War Ascension came out, it became clear that the series either needed to reinvent itself or go away for a very long time, if not forever. Well, reinvent itself it did, and boy are we glad it did. God of War 2 director Cory Barlog returned to Sony Santa Monica to bring the series back from its hiatus, and under his leadership, they ended up delivering a generation-defining game. God of War 2018 is a blueprint for how to strike the perfect balance between rebooting and continuing a series, all at the same time. It respects the past, but it isn't beholden to it. And in towing that delicate line, it ends up appealing in equal measure to veteran fans of the series, as well as players who have never played a God of War game in their life. Super Mario Odyssey. From the moment it was first revealed, Super Mario Odyssey looked like it was going to be the ultimate Mario game. And while its ranking within the series is up for debate, no one can deny that it is easily one of the best platformers ever made. Every world you visit is crafted with so much love and care that the simple act of walking and jumping around and exploring every nook and cranny to discover delightful secrets can take up hours of your time. Then there's the capturing mechanic, which turns the entire game on its head and makes for some of the most ingenious and inventive moments we've ever experienced in a Mario game. Then, of course, there's Mario himself, who has a ridiculously deep repertoire of moves that platforming enthusiasts are digging into to this day. Super Mario Odyssey is a celebration of everything that makes this series great, and it'll be a long time before we play something like this again. Hades. Very few developers in this industry have a track record as pristine as Supergiant Games, who have been on a hot streak since basically the day that they were born as a studio. And given the fact that this is a developer that has never had a misstep, saying that Hades is their best game to date is very high praise. And it's not unearned in the slightest. There's a very good reason why Hades has captured the attention of the entire industry. It succeeds on so many levels. It's an accomplished roguelite game with enthralling combat and that essential one more run hook, but at the same time it tells an excellent story and manages to maintain a steady and constant sense of progression, both of which are things that even the best games in the genre have consistently struggled with. Many indie releases over the last few years have proven that smaller productions can be just as good, if not better, than the biggest AAA games out there. Hades has immediately and confidently placed itself on the top of that list of indie greats. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. CD Projekt Red's The Witcher games were fairly niche for a pretty long time. Though they had their fans, they weren't really what you would call blockbuster hits. All of that changed in 2015 when The Witcher 3 came along and took the masses by storm. At that time, it was one of the most ambitious open-world games anyone had ever played, a title that it holds to this day. Excellent quests, meaningful player choice, a beautiful and massive world, stellar visuals, and a wonderful and excellently written cast of characters all come together in this modern classic, delivering an experience the likes of which even CD Projekt Red themselves have not been able to replicate. Divinity Original Sin 2. The 8th console generation saw the CRPG genre making a veritable comeback, but even among a large crowd of excellent new additions to the genre, Larian Studios' Divinity Original Sin 2 stands out as a titan among CRPGs. Choice and consequence is a tricky thing to nail down in games. Most games only ever manage to drum up an illusion of choice at best. But Original Sin 2 proudly boasts of meaningful choices and unpredictable consequences as one of its biggest strengths. And that's just one of countless strengths. Excellent characters, sharp and witty writing, deep role-playing mechanics that encourage actual build diversity, engaging and tactical combat, oodles of lore to dive into. The list goes on. Resident Evil 2 2019. How do you remake a game like Resident Evil 2, which so many people hold so dear, and which is also frequently regarded as one of the best survival horror games of all time? Do you play it safe and color within the lines, or do you go off track and try to do something different? Capcom have never been averse to taking risks, and a risk they took with RE2's 2019 remake. To say that it paid off would be a huge understatement. Every moment of Resident Evil 2 is dripping with tension, whether you're shooting a zombie in the kneecaps as it shambles towards you, or carefully edging past a terrifying licker as it hangs off the ceiling, or running for your life while the trenchcoat-clad fedora-wearing Mr. X bombs down a corridor in your direction with murderous intent. Resident Evil 2 is the epitome of the survival horror genre, and an instant classic that captures everything that makes this series so good. Hollow Knight. Like CRPGs, Metroidvanias have also enjoyed a formidable resurgence over the last few years. And like CRPGs, Metroidvanias also saw the release of a game that will forever be counted as one of the best the genre has ever had to offer. Hollow Knight is, simply put, Metroidvania perfection. It distills everything that makes this genre so good, and captures that essence in a startlingly stellar game. The world of Hollow Nest is vast and varied, and the intricate and interconnected map here is one of the most brilliantly designed we've ever seen in a game. The combat is challenging, the platforming is silky smooth and feels unbelievably good. The constant sense of progression is perfectly paced, and there are countless boss fights and secrets to uncover, which makes exploration feel exactly as rewarding as it should in a Metroidvania game. Like fellow genre giant Super Metroid before it, Hollow Knight is a game that will forever be regarded as one of the best games of its time. The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us was lightning in a bottle. With a sequel to one of the greatest games of all time, a sequel that many claimed for the longest time was wholly unnecessary no less, Naughty Dog certainly had their work cut out for them. The Last of Us Part 2 rose to the challenge magnificently though. Not only does it tell a shocking and affecting story with that typical Naughty Dog flair, which is backed by career-defining performances and excellent writing, it is also the developer's best-playing game in a long time. The larger levels of The Last of Us Part 2 have been expertly crafted to squeeze out every last drop of potential from the game's core mechanics. And whether it's as a linear stealth title or a tense survival horror experience, the game confidently executes all of its ideas with resounding success. No, it's not entirely perfect, games rarely are, but it's a game that we're unlikely to stop talking about anytime soon. Persona 5 Royal. Slowly and steadily, the Persona series' stock had been rising over the years, and more people had been taking note of the excellent blend of slice-of-life gameplay, dungeon crawling, and role-playing that Atlus had concocted with these games. In 2017 with Persona 5, that formula found mainstream success, and then in 2020 with Persona 5 Royal, it hit even greater heights. P5R is, in so many ways, the ultimate RPG. It's a massive game that will keep you occupied for well over 100 hours, and whether you're exploring its varied dungeons or forming lasting bonds with any of its countless unforgettable characters, it keeps finding ways to surprise you. With one of the best turn-based combat systems of all time, an acid jazz soundtrack that will burrow its way into your brain, a sense of style that pervades every pixel of the game, and a story that will keep you engaged from beginning to end, which is a tall order for a 130-hour-long experience, Persona 5 Royal is a certified classic. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is a textbook example of the perfect sequel. Everything that was good about Blind Forest is present and accounted for, and even better than before. Meanwhile, every aspect of the predecessor that had room for improvement has been improved massively, most of all the combat. What we have as a result is a game that is nearly flawless in the ways that matter the most. From a gameplay perspective, excellent level design, blissfully fluid platforming and movement, solid combat, and engaging progression ensure that every moment you spend playing the game feels great. From a narrative perspective, the The masterful soundtrack, gorgeous visuals and art design, and the wordless yet immensely affecting storytelling combine to deliver an experience that somehow manages to stand even taller than the first game. Developing an absolute gem and then instantly improving upon it with an even better sequel is not something that many developers can manage. With Will of the Wisps, that's exactly what Moon Studios did. Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's hard to put into words how glad we are that Final Fantasy VII Remake is actually good enough to make it into this list. As hyped as everyone was for this game for what seemed like forever, many of us could never shake the feeling that the wildly inconsistent Square Enix and the wildly inconsistent Final Fantasy would join forces to once again disappoint the masses. Well, they sure proved us wrong. Final Fantasy VII Remake is spectacular. In combat, it strikes the perfect balance between tactics and action the way Final Fantasy has never been able to in the past. In music, it does justice to the imposing legacy of the original game. In narrative, it fleshes out the world and characters of Final Fantasy VII much better than any of us could have imagined. And as a remake, it manages to find that elusive balance between playing things too safe and playing things too bonkers. Although some would argue that it gets a bit too bonkers by the end. The best part is, this is only the beginning. We cannot wait to see what lies ahead. Bloodborne. No matter how highly we praise Bloodborne, it never seems like it's enough. From Software has been on top of this industry for over a decade now, but never have they come as close to absolute perfection as they did with this 2015 masterpiece. Bloodborne is a game that demands your attention. The grueling challenge inherent in a Souls-like game isn't something that would appeal to everyone, but this is a game that everyone should experience. The best combat From Software has ever crafted, a haunting yet undeniably beautiful setting, lore that you can pore over for countless hours, incredible level design that rewards exploration every step of the way, a string of unforgettable boss fights. Bloodborne has it all, and then some. For fans of Souls-like games, it doesn't get better than this. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Well, this one was kind of an easy choice, perhaps the easiest of them all. The Legend of Zelda was due for a reinvention after the underwhelming Skyward Sword, and Nintendo decided that this time, it was time to tear up the rulebook. Breath of the Wild came along and took the series in a completely new direction. Gone were the traditional dungeons, gone the item-based progression, gone the excessively linear direction of recent Zelda titles. No, in Breath of the Wild, total and absolute freedom was the name of the game. Once you're let loose in the massive world of Hyrule within the first few minutes, you're free to do whatever the hell you want. It's hard to think of open-world games that have handled exploration and traversal as well as Breath of the Wild does. The pure magic of discovery in this game is unparalleled, and the way it keeps surprising you thanks to its superbly reactive physics and chemistry engines gives it an enduring quality that's hard to come by in any game. Breath of the Wild has often been called one of the best games ever made in the short time that it's been out in this world, and we're inclined to agree. Red Dead Redemption 2. Okay, maybe this was the easiest choice of them all. A studio with a pedigree like Rockstar's always works under the burden of impossible expectations, and every single one of their games is held up to a ridiculously high standard of quality. But with Red Dead Redemption 2, they truly outdid themselves. Never before have we played an open-world game as ambitious, as gorgeous, as immersive as this, and it's likely going to be a very long time before we play one that comes close to replicating its astounding quality. Red Dead 2's vast and intricately designed world is one that you can easily lose hundreds of hours of your lives in. But even if it's a story that you're looking for, this is still one of the best games you could get your hands on. The slow demise of the Vanderlyn gang is told in truly captivating fashion, through characters that will stay with you forever, and a protagonist that may very well be the best protagonist we have ever played as in a video game. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a monument to open-world games, a monument to video game storytelling, and a monument to Rockstar's enduring legacy as one of the best developers in this industry. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.